Hello, welcome to
Hey,
Dust.
what's up?
As you can hear, this hello and welcome to I believe the seventh episode of Dust James Weekly Assault on U.S. Empire. For my intro today, I'm going to be interviewing a fellow YouTuber, very well informed, Mr. Mark Shear. Um, I recently posted a post on Facebook calling him a former Trump supporter who is now ready to take on U.S. imperialism. How's it going, Mark Shear?
Okay, what's up? Glad to hear from you.
You too. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, positions, your show.
Okay. Well, first of all, you said I was a Trump supporter. It is true. I was a Trump supporter. But the reason why I was a Trump supporter, I can get into with you right now about, yes, what type of work I've done in the past. Well, my last job, right now I'm just working on and off. You know what I mean? But my last full-time job was as a correctional officer in Texas. And when in Texas, I learned from the old style convicts. People have been in there for quite a while. And I had heard about this before, about the building tenders. What happened is, until there was a lawsuit stopping it, instead of having a lot of correctional officers, you had inmates serving as officers called building tenders. They had a skeleton crew of actual officers and got work was done by the building. They kept order. They kept the gangs from forming. They did a lot of brutality too. There's no question about it. But they still knew where everything was hidden. They knew they knew all the garbage. They knew everything about other inmates, where they would be hiding things, where they might be keeping a homemade knife, the shanks call. And when I was a correctional officer there, some of these old-time inmates were still there who had actually been building tenders. And they used to tell me how much things were when they actually had control of the prison.
Hmm.
And because, again, they knew they knew what they were doing. They knew everything. Okay? This is what I was expecting. I was hoping for Trump. I knew he was a crook.
Okay.
I grew up in New York, and I knew the man was a crook, but I thought that he was going to come down on the other crooks and knew all the bodies were buried.
Gotcha.
And was putting things up. That's why I thought he would be America's building tender. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Instead, he gets all these Wall Street types in there. He's got all these military-industrial types. He's got all these neocons, neolib, Ziocons, all these different cons. And they're advising him. And basically, he's doing the same warmongering policies as Obama did before him, Bush did before him, Slick Willie Clinton did before him, and before that, H.W. Bush. And to a degree, as far as I'm concerned, we haven't had a real patriotic president, who really looks out for the people since JFK, and you know what happened to him.
Yeah.
So I hope that explains pretty much, being a former Trump supporter.
Okay, so it was a critical vote. Like you had issues with him. You weren't like a cheerleader. It was a critical decision. Yeah.
I knew he had been a slumlord in New York City. I knew there's a lot of, in order to be a businessman in New York anyway, you pretty much got to be a crook. You got to deal with the mob. You got to deal with a lot of other shady characters. And his tie-in to Kushner is an example, because Kushner's father is an ex-con himself. He was actually Christie there, the governor of New Jersey. He was a U.S. attorney, and he put Kushner's father in jail.
All right.
So what?
Okay. Let's switch gears for a minute. What is your opinion of U.S. imperialism?
My opinion of U.S. imperialism really comes to, we've got a U.S. empire now.
Okay.
I think it needs to be completely. I think that all our troops from all over the world should be brought home. We do not need to be messing in other people's business. We should not have bases all over the world either, and we have no business pushing for regime change. I don't care where it is. I go along with both Ron Paul on the right, if you call him on the right. I mean, in a lot of things, he's more left than right. And I go along with like Cynthia McKinney on the left. And of course, with Tulsi Gabbard, who's also more to the left. We need to mind our own business. We need to bring our troops home. We just stay out of these foreign wars. And we need to cut our military budget, I would say, by 3/4. We still need to defend ourselves. I mean, it might happen one day. We might need to defend ourselves with. We should have the weapons to do it. But we don't need to be pushing other people around. We should stop these horrible sanctions. These sanctions are really acts of war, what we're doing. It's not hurting Russia.
Yes,
in fact,
sir.
it's helping. But it hurts countries like Iran badly. It hurts Venezuela. It hurts Nicaragua. It hurts Cuba. These countries have a right to their own type of government. And some of those guys, and everything I understand about Venezuela, before we put sanctions on them, they were doing pretty well. So that's my thing. I think the entire empire needs to be dismantled. Period.
Was part of your anti-imperialist sentiment what helped lead you to vote for Trump? Like some of his promises?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Do you think there's other people?
Like I was for Ron Paul before that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's other people in your situation that maybe they were critical of Trump, but he seemed less hawkish?
Yeah, because he did say certain things that I didn't like, but all in all, he definitely said he wanted to put America first and get out of these stupid wars, get out of Afghanistan, should never have been in Syria. We should never have been in any places. He criticized the Iraq war. He said it was, based on lies, which it was. My own opinion is George Bush, Dick Cheney, and a bunch of the other clowns, neocon clowns, should be on trial for war crimes.
Right on.
Should Obama, what he did to Obama, what he did to Libya, and what Slick Willie Clinton did in Yugoslavia, plus what he did as far as Iraq goes, all the starvations caused by Slick Willie's policy in Iraq, also.
Right on.
Matter of fact, Madeleine Albright actually said she thought it was fine and dandy that 500,000 kids were starved. So.
Right on. I think this is a great conversation. American patriot, myself, socialist, communist, united against U.S. imperialism, on the same page, fellow Americans. I think this is a great conversation.
Can I just say one?
Yeah.
One other thing about, you say you were socialist and all that?
Yes.
Actually, I've become much closer to socialism recently, okay? As I see what's happening with these predatory capitalists like Bloomberg, and Bezos, others. And I'm actually left of Bernie Sanders when it comes to economic issues. I'm actually left of him.
Wow.
Okay? But on social issues, no. Especially when it comes to the Second Amendment. I believe in constitutional carry. The Second Amendment.
Would you be able to label yourself as a populist?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that. That's
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I go into a hard question. I don't want to do it to you, but I got to go to a hard. Whenever I try to tell people on the left, there's people that voted for Trump, workers, populists. A lot of folks, they might have voted for Obama before. I'm not sure what your situation, but there's a lot of people who voted for Trump, who we can work with and we can build coalitions with. And the response they always give me is when Trump kicked off his campaign. Sorry. All right. The question they always tell me when I say we should unite with people that voted for Trump, the question they always ask me is, he started his campaign going down that escalator, and then he likened Mexican people to rapists, to murderers, he started his campaign on racism and appeal to racism. So like, my question is like, were you aware of this? Like, were you okay? Like, when you voted for Trump, like, did you think that he was a better option? Just give me your ideas on this.
Okay, you want my first of all, I heard the speech, what they always say about it. I know it's not true. He did not say. He said some of these people coming out through the border were dangerous. Okay, some of them were drug dealers and criminals, which is true. If you can't, if you get people coming in, you can't screen them. You don't know who's coming in. They can come in from any country. I don't care. It doesn't just have to be Mexico. If you don't screen people, absolutely, you could get criminals. You don't know what you get. On top of that, now look at with the coronavirus, you might get people who are sick and could spread diseases. No, he was. I don't think that was racist at all. I think if you look at Trump's record through the years, he's a lot of things, but he's not a racist. And I think people can work together with the former Trump supporters and the left because there's a lot in common there. There's a lot in common, for instance, between the libertarians and the socialists, especially on peace issues, war and peace issues, and taking on the big corporations. Now, the problem with the libertarians is they think at the same time they don't want to put restraints on private enterprise, and you've got to put restraints on them. Otherwise, they'll turn into corporate capitalists, and you'll get what you got now. But yeah, I think we can work together. Former Trump supporters can work together, and they are in a lot of cases with Tulsi Gabbard. And it's
yes, sir.
I think, but I will say this: I think Trump was misunderstood what he said.
Okay.
Because I heard the speech. He did not say all Mexicans. Far from it. He said some of the people coming through, and it is true. Because if you don't screen somebody, if you don't screen people, you don't know who's coming through. You can't do any kind of background check or anything like that. You don't know who's coming through. And I know people who actually came through, illegally, and good people who live in this area here. I'm not going to name names or nothing like that, but I do know some. Okay, and they're good people. Their kids now, a lot of their kids are grown. They talk perfect English now. They're no problem. But the problem is you do get a certain amount of criminals that are going to come through. If you don't screen people, you don't know.
That's good. So I can understand supporting basic immigration. A large nation has the right to form its borders, etc. But are you critical of some of Trump's immigration policies, separation of families, etc.?
Want to know the truth on that? I'm not sure right now. I'm not sure whether we're being told everything, what's actually going on there, how long people are being separated. I do know this. There is human trafficking going on. And a lot of times the people who are coming through, they say they're families, but a lot of times those kids have been, I don't know if you could say kidnapped or what, but it's being used for human trafficking. And you got to be careful about that. They do have to take some precautions. I think the conditions could be better there, and they should have a way there should be a way, maybe working with the Mexican government to know who's who and what's what, because there is human trafficking going on, and that's a horrible thing.
Okay. So you mentioned that that you have support for Tulsi Gabbard in the current election cycle.
Yes. She's my number one.
That's good. I believe she is the best on foreign policy amongst the Democratic candidates.
She is, and she's strong. You need somebody strong in there. When I watched Bernie cave in when Bloomberg accused him of that he's the Russians' favorite candidate, he got defensive. I wouldn't have gotten defensive. I would have gotten offensive. I says, "Listen, you predatory capitalist, you swindler. If I become president, I'm going to make sure wealth from swindlers like you get confiscated. We're going to raise your taxes so high you're not even going to know what to do. I put a 20% wealth tax a year on a billionaire. It was up to me. So I said my economic policy are way to the left of Bernie. You know?
Okay.
I don't know if they're left of yours, but they're way to the left of Bernie Sanders. That's for sure.
Okay.
Many
Would you
really.
would you be in favor of nationalizing the energy sector?
Absolutely. That's what Putin did when he took over in Russia. By the way, Putin, to me, Vladimir Putin got almost the perfect system right now. The Predators almost destroyed Russia in the 90s after the Soviet Union. And Putin came in there, and that's exactly what he did. He started nationalizing oil companies. He put some of these oligarchs in jail, forced others to make sure that they would now work for Russia and work for the people. And others fled the country. A lot of them in the United States. They're pushing neoliberal policies, as a matter of fact, here in the United States. I forgot the guy's name, one of the really worst dirtbags. And Browder made a lot of money. Bill Browder, swindler. He's an American, but a swindler of the worst type. And I think Putin should have arrested him before he had a chance to get out of the country. So that's what Putin did. He actually combined the best of capitalism with the best of socialism. And it's got, from what I understand, a very good national health care system there, retirement system. And it's in a country that's improving by leaps and bounds. They don't have any debt. They're out of debt now. Inflation is low. I think to me, that's the model. If I was to model our country, our system, after a system that would actually, I think, would be Russia of today.
Okay. That's pretty. Let's end on a positive note. Like, what are some things?
You don't think that's a positive note?
I think that is a positive note. That's a very good. I mean, I think that is positive. I'm thinking like what are some things we can do? Like you do your YouTube show. I'm doing my YouTube show. I think education is very important. Working with other forces is positive. What are your ideas on like next steps? Like what are things we can be doing to like make a difference?
Well, one thing, we got to push people to get off their couches and stop watching the stupid corporate media and stop reading the corporate media's newspapers. Unless you want, I do sometimes still go to the corporate media, especially like corporate talk shows, and just to see what the enemy is saying. But I'm armed enough now with information to know that it's a bunch of BS. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's what we should do. I think also people should be calling some of these talk shows like Breitbart, Neocon, Levin, or the other clown there, Hannity. They should be calling these shows and don't tell them exactly what you got to say don't, because that the call screener won't take. Wait till you get on and then bring it on them. You know what I mean? Information has to be passed around. People got to understand the people in this country are being used and abused. We don't understand it. Our tax money is being used to fund this evil empire. We're not getting what we should. I mean, poverty is too much poverty in this country. Too many people uninsured. There's a lot of, so many things. I mean, I can go on and on. There's so many things wrong. We've got to share information. That's all, I think that's so important. And stop with the left-right stuff. Just understand. We got to look out what's best for our people.
Right on. Right on, yeah.
Okay. I thought I left you there for a second. Yeah, look out for what's the best for the people. That's why I like Tulsi so much, because that's what she's, And stop this anti-Russian nonsense. That's so stupid. They're just using that. They're using that to try to fool people. Russia's not our enemy. They should be our best friend. Okay, they're the only thing they're doing is defending Russia. That's what they're using their military for. A lot of people know Russia has a $61 billion military budget. It's there to defend Russia, and yet they've got probably a better army than we do because they're motivated. They know they're defending their country. They're not pushing an imperial ambitions. I don't know. Is that a pretty good answer or what?
That's a great answer. Let's see. We're about. I don't know. You want to keep going, or you think that's a good way?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You asked me earlier about gun control, about like the socialist view on gun control.
Right.
And I think this is I think the immigration thing, I think that's the thing that hold a lot of people back. But this is another thing that stops more populist type forces from trying to work with socialists. And my position is that I support the Black Panthers arm themselves, self-defense groups in the Black community, Huey Newton Gun Club, also anti-racist organizations like Redneck Revolt, John Brown Gun Club. Like, I think the working class and oppressed nations should arm themselves and be ready. That isn't to say I'm not for. I'm for some like the background checks, like basic. Like there's. I think we need to get rid of the loopholes, but I'm not against like people owning guns. You know, like that. That's not my position.
See, this is my attitude now, and it goes a lot further, by the way, than most so-called conservatives will say. My attitude is you need constitutional carry. It says the Constitution shall not be infringed. I know it says stuff about the militia too, but it doesn't say you have to be a member of the militia. It says your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and there's a good reason for it. First of all, for self-defense. Okay, you never know. You can't count on police. You just can't count on them. All right. The other thing is a tyrannical government. People have to have the right to resist a tyrannical government, whether the tyrannical government comes from the right, from the left, or anywhere else. It has to be. You have to have peace. It's my opinion that we would have full-blown tyranny by now if it wasn't for the Second Amendment. And that's why somebody like Bloomberg is so much wants to come after the guns so badly, because he does not want the people to have the right to defend themselves against a corrupt government. And a guy like Bloomberg, to me, is would be a tyrannical dictator. He showed it when he was mayor of New York City with his stop and frisk rules, where he basically picked out and the police just picked out any black people they felt like picking out and stop and frisking, which was illegal. Because it wasn't just a pat down. They actually went through the pockets and, busted kids for marijuana, gave them criminal records. It was a police state. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like I said, I believe we should have much smaller police forces and much more armed citizens. You want to hear quickly an incident I had when I first moved here to North Carolina a couple of years ago?
Go ahead.
I was woken up around 1 o'clock in the morning. A car outside. Dogs also woke up. Okay, so I look outside, and a car is parked on my lawn. Okay, and I could see the tire tracks too. What they were up to, I don't know. But I went out with a shotgun, at Port Arms range. You ever been in the military?
No.
Well, okay, Port Arms means you carry it a certain way, like in both hands, up with the muzzle pointed in the air. As soon as I came out and they saw that, they booked. They were gone. Okay. At that point, after that, I did call the sheriff's department just to report what happened. But I didn't call 911 because I knew when I called 911, first of all, who knows when they would get there? And if they did, I don't trust these cops. They might have shot my dog. They might have shot me, because I wasn't going to do that. Gun was going to stay in my hands until I knew the situation was over. The threat was over. So this is what I'm talking about. Right away, as soon as they saw that gun, I didn't have to shoot it. I didn't have to fire. I didn't have to fire a warning shot. Nothing. As soon as they saw me coming out with a gun, of course the dogs might have helped a little bit too, but I'm pretty sure it was that. What they were up to, I don't know. There was two of them in the car. Hard to say, but I wasn't going to find out either. And I think people have that right. They shouldn't have to hide under their bed or something and wait till till the cops get there. Some of these cops are, they're woeful, woefully inept at taking care of business anyway. And they might shoot you instead of shooting the criminal, or
Okay.
they might shoot your dog. These things happen way too often. And like I said, the other thing is you have to be prepared. I mean, we don't know what kind of a government might take over. Right now, we still got some semblance of a democracy left. We do have an election and all that, but how long that's going to last, I don't know.
Okay.
That's why I think the Second Amendment is so important, as is the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment is really the teeth of the entire Constitution. I think it keeps us free.
Okay.
That's why
I've
compromise on that.
I've heard this, and I agree with everything you're saying. My issue with a lot of people saying what you're saying is sometimes there's this. Have you ever heard of like settler culture? This culture of fear and kind of like xenophobia. Like look at what happened with I think there's elements within the pro-gun movement that are scared, that believe the media about minorities, and they're fearful of minorities. And like if you look at like Trayvon Martin, like Zimmerman, like he went out of his way, like he wasn't defending himself, he went out of his way to kill a young black man. Do you think there's some problematic stuff within gun culture?
Well, let's first talk about Zimmerman. Zimmerman himself, the minority. Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir. Very true.
He was half Indian from Peru.
Okay.
His mother's side. Okay, so let's get the minority thing out. Whether he actually was out to kill Trayvon Martin, I don't know. But Martin was getting the better of him, and he shot him. I'm not going to judge, other than I'll say that afterwards, Zimmerman showed he wasn't wrapped too tight because he got in a bunch of other trouble. So again, I don't, I'm not going to take his side. Okay, but I always like to know everything about what something. So he was a minority himself. Second of all, I know a lot of minorities around here, and I knew a lot when I lived in Texas. They were just as armed to the teeth as white people. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the culture there. I mean, even here in North Carolina, it is not as much as Texas. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, people used to make fun of me because all I had was a shotgun and a revolver. That's a Yankee pea shooter. That's what they used to call it. Used to refer. Why do you get those Yankee pea shooters? In other words, they thought I should have an AR-15 or a AK-47. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's a culture, but I don't think it's a bad culture because it gives people the right to protect themselves. It gives the right also to defend the Constitution. And it also makes it unnecessary to have particularly large police forces, which can become very impressive. I don't think it has anything to do with it. Now, there might be some people that have this fear of minorities, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. But for the most part, I think the Second Amendment is there for a reason.
Okay.
I think people respect the Second Amendment.
Fair enough. I was going to cut it short, but I think it's going really well. I think I want to get into a deeper historical issue. I think we talked, from my understanding, you support the U.S. Constitution. Like that was a revolutionary document.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my position on the American Revolutionary War, that it was very positive, and a lot of peasant forces were involved. A lot of the lower class farmers and stuff got involved in the American Revolution, and they were part of the movement to kick out the British. But my criticism of the American Revolution is that once they kicked out the British, the elite banking forces suppressed the farmers and suppressed the lower class elements within the revolution. And the Constitution itself, in a revolutionary time period, was actually a way of suppressing the farmers, like to maintain their stability, to build a federal power, to keep the power of the banking class, and to stop local governments from forgiving loans to farmers. Like, what would be your response to that?
Well, I don't think the Constitution has anything to do with it. I think Constitution, first of all, one of the problems with the Constitution is we don't obey it.
Okay.
The other thing is, too, the founding fathers, to their credit, said, okay, it's the Constitution, but you have a right to add amendments to it. And of course, a lot of people bring out the fact that slavery was allowed, which is horrible. There's no question about it. But at least, the founding fathers had the premonition, to understand, to say, you know what, we're going to put in amendments so that we can remedy a lot of the mistakes, any of the mistakes we made. And I'd say slavery was like a birth defect. And we had to pay for it. We had to pay for hundreds of thousands of lives. And even that wouldn't have been good enough, because slavery would have still been allowed. A lot of people don't understand this. Until Lincoln pushed for the 13th Amendment that actually ended slavery in the United States. And then the 14th Amendment, of course, which granted full citizenship to free slaves or black people, okay, which mostly black people. And the thing is this, too. But again, how I say the Constitution doesn't get obeyed, that's the problem. We don't stick by the Constitution. The fact you had Jim Crow laws for all that time until the 1960s, this is against the Constitution. Once the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment is one thing, free the slaves. 14th Amendment gave full citizenship. In other words, when you had the Jim Crow laws that you had, this was against the Constitution and should have been remedied a long time before. I'm not one for a lot of federal power. Okay, I don't think the federal government should be able to interfere in certain number of things. But here was an example where the federal government should have interfered. They should come in and ended Jim Crow years before it was ended, and said you have no right under states' rights to deny American citizens their full rights as an American citizen, their constitutional rights.
Okay.
That was the Constitution.
I think you raised a lot of you raised a lot of good issues there, and I agree that there's stuff in the Constitution that's not being followed, and if it would be positive. You raised some good points that I didn't even think about to ask you, and that is, so you're from Texas, you live in North Carolina. I think
originally from New York.
Okay, but you've lived in Texas.
Yeah, long time. Yeah,
a long time. Okay, good. And I agree with your sentiments. It's my opinion that the Civil War was necessary to end slavery. Marx called it the Second American Revolution, where a violent force was necessary to put down the power of the slaveholding establishment. And it was a revolution, and it helped. It ended slavery, and then there was problems afterwards. So my question would be, like, what is your, like, do you agree with the assessment, and what is your opinion of the monument movement, where people are tired of having these statues dedicated to people who defended slavery in their towns? Like, what is your take on that?
Well, like I said, I'm not from the South originally, okay? And it's hard for me to really make it. You have people who's actually grandparents or maybe great grandparents. You're actually, and I know people like this out where I live here in North Carolina. that actually fought for the Confederacy. And you take a guy like Robert E. Lee. And Lee actually, from what I understand, was against slavery. I understand he even freed his slaves. I didn't even know this until recently, until all this stuff about the monuments came up. And he felt as a Virginian. I don't. So I'm really. It's really hard for me to really say that whether you should or shouldn't have the monuments, because, like I said, I'm not from this area.
Okay.
You know, originally, and it's really. I can understand both sides of it. All right. It's it's kind of like a north-south issue in a way, and surprisingly too, I've talked to black people who actually support the idea of these monuments. So it's hard for me to say. I really can't make it.
Okay. I put you on the spot like that. It's fine.
I don't think we should have had, for instance, what we had at Charlottesville. I don't think that should have happened. Okay.
Okay.
I think cooler heads should have prevailed.
Okay. Let's see. Can you think of any other topics to discuss?
Not really. Other than you touched on the monument.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of Confederate flags around here. I'm sure down by you see it also.
Yeah,
but
it's a nationwide movement funded by the right wing in response to taking down the monuments. Like, there's an organization doing it.
Actually, I see more Confederate flags around here than I used to see down in Texas, because Texas is very much. Remember, Texas was the Lone Star State. They actually they were actually a country before they became a state of the United States. And actually, a lot of people don't know Sam Houston, who's actually considered kind of like the father of Texas. He actually was very much against Texas going along with the South. So that's probably why you don't see the amount of Confederate flags down there. You see a lot of the Lone Star State flags, which is actually the Texas flag. But you don't see as many of the Confederate flags as I see around here.
Okay.
Or when I drive up to Virginia and places like that,
Well, I did a good show on about my home state of North Carolina, and they were the state that lost a lot. They were the poorest state in the South, and they actually ended up losing a lot in that war. I mean, my position, they were fighting against their own interests. Like, slavery kept everyone in the South poor, and the people that fought in the war were fighting against their own class interests. It's the poor people that go.
Right.
North Carolina was the poorest state, and there was a lot of Confederate veterans from North Carolina because of it.
I didn't know North Carolina was the poorest state. I didn't realize that. But I do know this. I know that there weren't all that many slaveholders. Most people did not own slaves. Again, people fight. It's kind of like what you see going in these stupid wars in the Middle East and places like that, where you get soldiers that mostly come from the working class who are fighting the wars of the corporate interests. The big banks, the Rothschild, Rockefeller banks, the Exxon Mobil, fighting for the interests of, let's say, Israel and Saudi Arabia, but not fighting for American interests. And these are kids, coming again from working. So it really hasn't changed all that much when you come to think of it. It was the same thing really during the Civil War. It was actually the slaveholders of pretty wealthy landowners. And what can I say? People continue to be stupid. It doesn't seem to change, I shouldn't say stupid, just ignorant, I say,
Yeah. Actually, you bring up some issues. I thought, so are you former military?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I wasn't in combat. So it's
okay. I'm not sure if you saw my first video that I did, but I'll give you a little bit of my history. My family were passive. My dad had pacifist roots in the Quaker Church and stuff. He wouldn't let us watch war movies and stuff like that.
Quakers?
Yes. And so I grew up knowing the military against militarism and stuff like that. And then later on, when I got into high school and I started analyzing the class analysis and all that, I actually did counter recruitment to the military in high school. Like the recruiters would go around and lie to people, and I would go around and give them factual information saying you can be deployed. Like they can change your contract at any minute, stuff like that. So given my background, like, what is your position like on joining the military? Should we not join the military, knowing that, knowing what these wars are doing? Like, should we be more critical? What's your positions?
Absolutely. I think we should discourage kids from joining the military as well as possible. Now, I'll be honest with you. One of my sons, as soon as he graduated high school, joined the Air Force. And at the time, I did not discourage him. But at the time, I hadn't been what I call red-pilled yet. I still believed the bullshit about 9/11. I still thought it was really, I didn't understand. I mean, I've heard all the stories about the government was involved in inside job, but I hadn't really been able to do my own research yet to find out that it was, at least it's my opinion, it was an inside job, and it was also aided by the governments of Israel and Saudi Arabia. Okay, now this is pretty controversial to say that, but you want to go to a good source. Look up Ryan Dawson. He's a Carolinian, by the way. He's an American Indian, by the way, too. Mostly American Indian heritage. He's also an expert in the Civil War, and he's from North Carolina. He lives in Japan now, and he's done extensive research on 9/11, extensive research on Israeli and Saudi involvement in it. I think like I said, you can get him on YouTube. You can get him BitChute. They're giving a hard time on YouTube. They keep on shutting them down and then letting them back in. Ryan Dawson, you might really want to look him up. Okay, I've called the call screener and call lines a number of times. I told him, why don't you put Ryan Dawson on? Why don't you invite him? So now my son, he only did one tour in the Air Force, and now he's very much anti-war. As a matter of fact, he supports standards for president. As do a lot of veterans, by the way. Just like a lot of veterans supported Ron Paul when he was running. So, like I said, it all depends. But right now, I'm all for. I don't think people should go in. You should force the government to push a draft. If they pull a draft, you'll have a revolution, or just about a revolution. You'll have riots. You'll have mutinies. You'll have people refusing to go out to field, as happened during the Vietnam War. A lot of soldiers refuse to go out anymore. There are a lot of what they call fragging of officers and NCOs that keep on getting their soldiers into more and more firefights. So they were like, if you have a draft now, these wars would stop. Then the people would pay attention. The parents of these soldiers would pay attention, and then kids themselves would pay attention.
Right on.
I'm very much against the military. I'm against what the military is doing. I'm not against those protecting this country. Absolutely not. All right, but I'm against them going around, with these interventionist wars around the world and trying to overthrow governments and do whatever else. Right now, I'm very concerned with what's going to happen with Turkey. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You got a crazy in there that wants to, start with Syria. Syria's kicking its butt right now too. The Syrian army is a good army because they're battle hardened. I'm really worried that this fool Trump is going to get us involved though. And God knows what actually lead to World War III because Russia's involved.
All right, I think that's a great note to end it on. Maybe we could do this again sometime. I want to thank you for your time. Like that was good. I learned some more stuff. All right.
Nope.
I'll let you go.
Put this on my Facebook. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to give you this audio recording. I'm not sure how well this live went. I'm not even sure if they can hear you. I got it out. No one's no one came on the live, but it's going to be up on Facebook.
I'll check you out on. You'll be on. This will be on YouTube, right?
Yeah, this will be on YouTube, regardless of the. I'm not sure if they can even hear it very well, but I have the audio, and I'll send you the audio as well.
Cool. And I'll share it too. Then I'll share it after that.
Yeah, I can make a video with just the audio if it didn't go through. But anyways, thank you, and have a good one.
All right, Dust. You too, buddy.
All right. Bye. Okay. That was my fellow YouTuber, Mark Scheer. I think we share a lot of we differ on a lot of issues, as seen, particularly on immigration, and the nature of the U.S. system itself. But I think there's forces out there that may have voted for Trump that are with us on the war issue. The majority of people in this country are against these wars. The Soviet saying, or Lenin's saying, the Bolsheviks saying, peace, land, and bread. Peace, land, and bread. When the Soviet Union, or before the Soviet Union, when they overthrew the Tsar, and then the Democrat social forces got involved in World War I, and it took the Bolshevik, the party of a new type. The peace movement is what really helped with the Soviet Revolution. The call of peace, land, and bread led the peasants and workers to rise up and take power, and that's what put the Soviets into power, was anti-war mobilization. And I think there's forces out there that we can unite with at least in the anti-war movement. And we should have calls for peace. That was my intro. I'm going to go into current events. I'm not as well prepared today. I think I'll just go over what's off the top of my head. I think there was repression. I talked about the Canadian Native American resistors, and they had solidarity and efforts. They've shut down parts of the economy, shut down parts of the railroad to stop expansion of natural gas in their country on native lands. And I said, well, Canada's going to repress them. Interesting how, and it happened. Police went in and arrested brutally Native American people. Like Canada, even with its reputation slightly better than the United States, is a settler nation and a capitalist nation that puts the interest of the oil companies in over their own indigenous people. A lot happened over the last bit of time period. The coronavirus is spreading. I think the Chinese did a great effort of stopping it. They shut down whole cities. They have trucks coming in to give people food. I think if you don't spend money on military, what you're able to do is amazing. You actually invest in the economy in China. Their disease prevention was amazing. There was a lot of stereotypes going around that it was about like them eating bats or whatever, which wasn't unproven. I mean, it does go back to a meat market, but my position is viruses is the result of a small society. When you have so many different parts of the globe constantly in contact with each other, viruses take place and they spread. Like, it has nothing to do with the Chinese culture. There's a lot of racism in that. But the Chinese government actually outlawed consumption of certain meats and wild meats. to get rid of that reputation. And not sure, like, I understand why that wasn't the position. Like, a lot of hunters would go crazy. But the thing is, they have the government necessary that's able to fight for working families in China. Another thing that happened was that debate. Anybody watch that debate? I was horrified by that debate. Red baiting. They went hard, and Bernie Sanders caved in. Bernie Sanders viciously attacked the people of Nicaragua, China, and Cuba. Like, all he did was defend, like, their literacy program. There's a lot more than a literacy program in Cuba. I think that gets to the position. Bernie Sanders is an imperialist. He voted for decades for imperialist wars. We, the American people, our enemies are not in Nicaragua. Our enemies are not in Cuba. Our enemies are not in Russia. Our enemies are not in China. These are enemies of the oil and banking cartel, the oil and banking cartel that run this country. We should not fear red baiting. We should be able to be openly communist and stand in solidarity with all the positive progress of Nicaragua, Cuba, and China. I think that debate proved, I quoted, or I paraphrase Ajamu Baraka, saying that although Sanders has made the term socialism, or has brought that out into the common discourse, his Eurocentric positions and assaults on the socialists' experiments and experience in the global South is deeply problematic and actually may cause more harm. All right. Not really prepared. I guess I'll go into conclusion what my thoughts are. Us in the socialist camp right now, we got our work cut out for us. We need to be out there dispelling the lies. When even the most progressive forces that are allowed to exist, like Sanders, can brutally state lies and attacks against the people in Nicaragua, Cuba, and China, it is our job to be out there dispelling the myths. Let's be out there talking about the accomplishments of the Soviet Union, talking about the accomplishments of China, the accomplishments of Cuba and Nicaragua. The Nicaraguan state has developed material and has way better conditions than the capitalist neoliberal places surrounding it. They've lifted people out of poverty. Same with Cuba, same with China. And that's why they're enemies of the liberal establishment, the imperialist establishment, is because they represent a threat. They have elevated people out of poverty, which has taken profits out of the hands of the oil and banking cartels. We need to destroy the influence. We need to outright destroy the influence, the power, the very power of the oil and banking cartels and in Wall Street and London that control this country, keep a majority of the world poor. We need to destroy them, or there is no hope. All right, all power to the people.